Prime Minister Modi shared his vision of a new India at the United Nations General Assembly. The Prime Minister asserted that the various welfare schemes initiated under his leadership in India gave the world a new hope for a better tomorrow. The Prime Minister also shared that India was one of the leading nations in the fight against climate change. Addressing the 74th session of the UN General Assembly, the Prime Minister exuded confidence that the experience from these projects could be beneficial to those nations who, like India, are striving for development. Prime Minister Modi, though, steered away from any mention of Pakistan, but exhorted the international community to stand united against terrorism, which he described as one of the biggest challenges, not for any single country, but for the entire world.
आज से 3000 वर्ष पूर्व भारत के महान कवि कणियन पुंगुन ड्रनार उन्होंने विश्व की प्राचीनतम भाषा तमिल में कहा था, यादम उरे यावरुम केडीर, यानी हम सभी स्थानों के लिए अपनेपन का भाव रखते हैं और सभी लोग हमारे अपने हैं। और ये 3000 साल पहले की बात कर रहा हूं। देश की सीमाओं से परे अपनत्व की यही भावना भारत भूमि की विशेषता है। भारत ने बीते 5 वर्षों में सदियों से चली आ रही विश्व बंधुत्व और विश्व कल्याण की उस महान परंपरा को मजबूत करने का काम किया है। हम उस देश के वासी हैं जिसने दुनिया को युद्ध नहीं, बुद्ध दिए हैं, शांति का संदेश दिया है। और इसलिए हमारी आवाज में आतंक के खिलाफ दुनिया को सतर्क करने की गंभीरता भी है और आक्रोश भी। हम मानते हैं कि ये किसी एक देश की नहीं, बल्कि पूरी दुनिया की और मानवता की सबसे बड़ी चुनौतियों में से एक है। आतंक के नाम पर बटी हुई दुनिया उन सिद्धांतों को ठेस पहुंचाती है जिनके आधार पर यूएन का जन्म हुआ है। और इसलिए मानवता की खातिर आतंक के खिलाफ पूरे विश्व का एकमत होना, एकजुट होना मैं अनिवार्य समझता हूं।
While Prime Minister Modi showcased his total statesmanship at this United Nations General Assembly speech, Pakistan's Prime Minister, on the other hand, Imran Khan, embarrassed himself. Once again, not only did he fumble throughout that speech, he also threatened more Pulwama-like attacks, literally in those words. He spoke about nuclear war, and that wasn't all. The Pakistan Prime Minister even spoke about nuclear war. He threatened it. The Indian Prime Minister talked about peace and harmony for the entire world, but the Pakistan Prime Minister only talked belligerently about war, about jihad. Isolated, insulted, and clearly very, very frustrated after a week of setbacks for himself and for Pakistan, Imran Khan went on a rant, a tirade against Prime Minister Modi, even talking about the RSS and mentioning it over and over again, and Indian Muslims. He, however, also went on to admit that Pakistan's army indeed trained jihadis. He also failed to address the United Nations about the persecution of Uyghur Muslims.
हम उस देश के वासी हैं जिसने दुनिया को युद्ध नहीं बुद्ध दिए हैं और इसलिए हमारी आवाज में आतंक के खिलाफ दुनिया को सतर्क करने की गंभीरता भी है और आक्रोश भी.
Supposing a country 7 times smaller than its neighbor is faced with the choice, either you surrender or you fight for your freedom till death, what will we do? I ask myself this question. And my belief is, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but one. And we will fight. And when a nuclear-armed country fights to the end, it will have consequences far beyond the borders.
Well, it is expected to be a Narendra Modi Imran Khan showdown at the United Nations. At least that's what the media wanted to project it as in some way. But the contrast between those two speeches, even though there is no real comparison of the speeches by the Indian and Pakistani Prime Minister, the contrast couldn't have been starker. India Today's path-breaking innovation speech Analytica has done a word-for-word comparison of the two speeches by Prime Minister Modi and Imran Khan's speeches at the General Assembly of the United Nations. While Prime Minister Modi in his 16-minute speech reached out to the world, spoke about development, environment, peace, Imran Khan's 50-minute speech was focused on Islam and predictably Kashmir, Islamophobia, nuclear war, Prophet, Modi, RSS and the like. Well, joining me live from New York City, we have with us our senior executive editor, Gaurav Sawant, who's been tracking Narendra Modi and indeed Pakistan's Imran Khan right through the week, which all of it began with the big event in Houston. Also with us live is Leela Ponappa. She's a very well-known former Indian diplomat. Pathikrit Pen is a strategic affairs expert. Sadanand Dhume is fellow with the American Enterprise Institute. He's with us live this evening from Washington, D.C. And Kamar Chima is a well-known strategic affairs analyst from Pakistan. Welcome to all of you. Gaurav, coming to you first. It's impossible to compare the two speeches because they were so vastly different. The Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But how are you seeing it, Gaurav? Because in many ways, the breakdown of Imran Khan, the frustrations of Imran Khan were quite writ large on him through this week. So in many ways, the manner in which he delivered the speech today and the content aren't really that surprising.
No, they're not. In fact, they're rather disappointing. Imran Khan resorted to nuclear saber rattling, which unfortunately many would say was on expected lines, but one would have expected him to have risen to the occasion instead of stooping to a new low. And that's exactly what happened. So he invoked religion. He spoke about RSS. I mean, this is a UN platform. It's a global platform. It's not a bilateral platform, but that is exactly what Imran Khan ended up making this out to be. Ranting about Kashmir, even though he got no other takers over the past several days. All he's done is spoken about Jammu and Kashmir, whether it's at important think tanks or bilaterals. Kashmir has been, he's like a struck gramophone record, not moving forward. He doesn't know how the narrative has changed completely. Just contrast this with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. At every speech, when he's speaking to the business community at Bloomberg, he's catering to the business community. When he's receiving an award at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he's talking about how he's taking India to a new level of cleanliness, protecting environment. When he got, when he was speaking with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, it was all about protection of environment. And even here, he said, we are the country of Gautam Buddha and not Yudh. But what you saw from Imran Khan was only rather disappointing nuclear saber rattling. And perhaps, Shiv, that's the reason why he's got no traction whatsoever, Shiv.
Okay, Kamar Chima, you're laughing, even though I don't think anybody is really laughing at what your Prime Minister did at the United Nations General Assembly. Go ahead. You want to say something? Then I'll bring in the others as well.
Well, I'm not a good student of history, but I was just researching. I think Prime Minister Modi has brought a national embarrassment for India by calling that we have given Buddha to the world, because Buddha was born in Nepal, Lumbini, and I was just going through a research, and I was on the website of United Nations Educational, Scientific
He
and
meant
Cultural
wisdom, Kamar. He meant wisdom, not the person.
So you are starting
Buddha as
history,
in the wisdom, not the person.
Sir,
Good God.
Prime Minister Modi
Good
starting
God,
history
Kamar.
as if Buddha came here and we gave the word to the Buddha.
Wikipedia to Kamar Chima's rescue. this is.
But coming to the point, I think Prime Minister Imran Khan spoke something wonderful. Climate change, money laundering, Islamophobia, and Kashmir all are international issue. None of these is a Pakistan issue or a domestic issue. And I think as India
Rejected.
was. Excuse me?
Go for it. Finish your point. I'm just saying that all those things that Imran Khan mentioned today in his General Assembly speech are things that he's been raising, periodically over the last few weeks at several different levels of the United Nations, and it hasn't gotten any traction. He's received no traction. So his speech was just like a one-way conversation. Anyway, complete what you were saying.
Yes. So what I was saying was that I think the Prime Minister Imran Khan was speaking like a humanitarian, and who was speaking for human beings, who was speaking for humanity, and he was the man who was
for nuclear war.
For 50 good minutes, he spoke about humanity and United Nations, where he has gone. United Nations stand for humanity, and I think the way he has spoken, you damaged our trees, and everybody was clapping in that hall. I think the way there was a clapping for Prime Minister Imran Khan, he has emerged as a bigger statesman.
Yeah.
And if I remember, and if I can tell you one thing,
Huge.
it is Prime Minister Modi who is helping Prime Minister Imran Khan to be a better, to be a good, and to be one of the
Gaurav wants to, Gaurav has something to say to you, and then I'll bring the others in. Gaurav, you want to say something to Kamar Chima on the big humanitarian nuclear war gesture by Imran Khan, the great Pakistani humanitarian?
It's hilarious. It's actually so hilarious. We've been interacting with a number of diplomats, and not just Indian diplomats, a number of foreign diplomats, and off the record, they say that Imran Khan actually sounds like, if I may say, like a nut job when he talks about nuclear saber rattling in today's day and age. If he thinks that he's going to get the attention of the world, on the contrary, they just switch off when they hear something or someone talk about nuclear saber rattling, because that's clearly not happening. Contrast that with Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking about development in this entire region and across the world. Who's being felicitated across the globe, who's being welcomed with open arms, and who's like literally on a bent knee requesting people, at least meet me, at least get Prime Minister of India to start talking to me, or there will be nuclear war. So, the world doesn't live in the 19th century. The world has moved on. It's high time Pakistan either catch up or go back to Stone Age.
Stay with me, Leela Ponappa. I want to ask you, because it's easy to be emotional about this particular subject when it comes to India and Pakistan. But I want to ask you, as a seasoned former diplomat, has Imran Khan, I mean, we must also look at it very objectively, the things he said. Has he done his country any favors, with the choice of speech that he made today at the United Nations?
Well, I think that's something that his country will have to reflect. And going by Mr. Kamar Chima's comments, he seems to think he did Pakistan a great favor. But at this stage, I really wouldn't like to get into a compare and contrast, because we're really comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah,
so let's put Prime Minister Modi's speech aside, because he spoke of India's vision. Terrorism was part of it in terms of combating it together with the rest of the international community. But I think really when I heard excerpts from Imran Khan's speech, I was really reminded of two former occasions. When in 1971, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto tore up a Security Council resolution, and this was at the height of the war for the liberation of Bangladesh. And slightly later, when Benazir, I think under pressure from the army, went into really a high decibel, rabble-rousing speech about so-called Azadi for Kashmir. So these things are done under pressure.
Yes.
There is Pakistan's own self-perception of itself.
Yes.
In terms of whether, you know, the whole threat, the unpredictability about its nuclear capability, which frankly is somewhat immature. This would have been a good opportunity for Imran Khan instead to have declared that Pakistan too will follow a nuclear doctrine
No first use, yeah.
based on no first use. Instead of which you had a lot of, shall I say, missile rattling, if
Yes.
not saber rattling.
Absolutely. Lots.
And also the attack on the Indian Prime Minister, whatever one thinks of the politics, and I'm not getting into the virtues of the politics on either side, but, you know, what did Imran Khan have to say about Pakistan? What about the state of economic development?
Absolutely.
What about the development of society? What about its contribution to the positive constructive aspects of multilateralism? None of that was missing. So very clearly the man is under pressure.
Yeah,
I think certainly he was addressing a domestic constituency. He's going to flog the Islamic agenda, but I think the Islamic countries have really seen that there are some aspects they can accept and some that they cannot.
Yeah, there were parts of the speech that did come across as quite immature, which in fact I want to bring Sadanand Dhume in on that. Sadanand, I agree with Leela Ponappa when she says that, you know, it's apples and oranges. It's, you know, it's hard to, you know, actually have to compare the two speeches. So let's keep the Prime Minister of India's speech aside for a moment. What did you think of Imran Khan's speech? Yes, he's under pressure. You know, back home he's being hailed for it. Has he done Pakistan any favors in the current international scenario, Sadanand?
It's too soon to say. It seems to me that he is trying to sort of do two things, or rather three things. One is that he's obviously trying to bring greater global and Western attention to this, to Kashmir by talking about the nuclear issue. I agree with the other panelists that that's, you know, that's pretty immature and that actually probably cuts the wrong way from Pakistan's perspective because it makes him come across as extremely irresponsible. But there were a couple of other plays that I saw, which, you know, it's too early to say, but they may actually work out for Pakistan. And one is to appeal over the heads of the leaders of Islamic countries directly to their population. That's why he spoke about, you know, for example, things like, you know, what he calls Islamophobia and so on. Now, you and I may have a different view of that, but I think that that actually is something that was clever, because even though India has got a lot of support, for example, in Gulf countries, places like UAE and Saudi Arabia, what Imran Khan is trying to do here is to sort of position this in a way where the people who are watching this kind of instinctively empathize with. That's the second. Third, which I think is something that we should keep a close eye on, is this idea of trying to prepare global opinion for a resumption of violence. And if I were an Indian policymaker, that's the thing that I would be paying most attention to, because what he's trying to do is tilt how the world will see what happens should violence resume in Kashmir, which is dangerous. And I don't think the world will necessarily buy it, but that seems to be his attempt at any rate.
Okay, so keeping the nuclear war threats aside, because I think we're all pretty unanimous that he sounded immature, it would cut the wrong way, makes him sound very irresponsible, even though Qamar Cheema doesn't seem to think so. Pathikrit, you know, the whole Islamophobia suggestion, he mentioned it, he used the word Islamophobia something like 40 times in that 50-minute speech. But Pathikrit, you know, we also know that the credibility of Pakistan and Imran Khan to speak about Islamophobia at this time, does it hold any water? For God's sake, you even had the United States talk to Pakistan and ask about, you know, why nothing has ever been said, or there are no concerns in Pakistan about Uyghur Muslims in China.
Shiv, I'll just take your permission to first give a rebuttal to Qamar Cheema. Qamar, I'll just request you to read the whole Wikipedia first. Siddharth Gautam was born in Lumbini. His enlightenment and awakening as Lord Buddha and the spread of Buddhism started from ancient kingdom of Magad, which is in India. That's what Prime Minister Modi meant. So that's my request, that you read the entire thing first. Secondly, yes, when it comes to, you know, the whole issue of Islamophobia and all that, I think that has not cut the ice, and that's the reason even when they went to UNHRC, they could not garner 16 votes, even 16 votes. They could not get it to the United Nations Security Council because of the same reason. There is no other country in the world where there is so much of systematic extermination of Shias as it happens in Pakistan. If you talk about the atrocities which happen in Balochistan, they've used Cobra helicopters, they've used F-16s, they have used tanks for crushing common civilians. It happened in Balochistan, which is, of course, it's a Muslim majority or 100% Muslim province. There's no Hindu over there. When you talk about atrocities in Sindh, when you talk about what happens, in the area of Gilgit-Baltistan, that systematic demographic shift and the, attacks on Ismailis, here is one country whose only Nobel Prize winner, Abdul Salam, had to leave the country because 1974, when you talk about, they were declared, the Ahmadiyas were declared as non-Muslim. So, the reason why the Gulf countries have not given much traction to what Pakistan is saying is because they have seen that here is this one country, Pakistan. In fact, one of our biggest representatives in the United Nations is Syed Akbaruddin. So we don't get into that Muslim-Hindu thing at all. And that's why they are trying to say that. I will say one thing. They keep on talking about Article 370. I would request Kamar Chima and the lobbies of them, some of them in Kashmir, what was done to the Gujjars and the Bakarwals of Kashmir, who are Muslims and who were denied all kind of political representation for several decades.
I just want to extend that just a little bit because, there is a suggestion that Islamophobia and invoking it so many times. Kamar, you can answer all of the points raised by our guests that, Islamophobia would invoke some empathy in the Muslim world. The issue, as Pathikrit rightly mentions, is one of credibility. It's also one of credibility. It's one of Pakistan's track record. You had all those minority groups protesting against you, Kamar, outside the United Nations General Assembly today as well. Yeah, you can answer. There's a credibility issue about whether people are actually buying that message.
Well, I think, first of all, let me tell you, if I think my friend have mentioned Wikipedia, I think United Nations website is much better.
Okay, but let's get beyond that because you thought Budh was talking about a person he wasn't. Yeah.
Coming to the point, I think I will also refer to Madam Ambassador Leela that all the topics which Prime Minister Imran Khan has spoken, all of those four are multilateral issues. And as Prime Minister Modi has spoken about the multilateral issues,
RSS.
I think listen. I think he's linking it to Kashmir. I think from Prime Minister Modi has moved from multilateralism to bilateral, from bilateral to unilateralism. So his speech is saying something else, his actions are something else. So we find a huge hypocrisy in his speech because he's talking to the international community about the multilateral issues, but he's doing a unilateral act in one of the conflict, which is between India and Pakistan. So I think this is what Prime Minister Imran Khan, as an ambassador of Kashmir, is exposing Prime Minister Modi, and I think he has done a great and a wonderful job, a tremendous job.
I don't know how much Kool-Aid someone needs to drink to, to interpret the speech of Imran Khan as having exposed India and the Prime Minister. Both Leela Ponappa and Gaurav Sawant want to rebut. Gaurav, to you first, because I have a tenuous link with you in New York City, and then I'll go to Ms. Ponappa. Gaurav, to you. What do you want to say to Kamal?
Kamar Chima should have been here in New York to see the large number of Muhajirs who were out on the streets protesting against Imran Khan and Qamar Javed Bajwa. He should have been on the streets to see the Balochs protesting against Qamar Javed Bajwa and Imran Khan. With pictures, with videos, they have truckloads. Of course, there was an aircraft which said Free Balochistan, and it's not restricted just to these two communities. The Shias were protesting here in New York. The Hindus and the Christians were protesting against Imran Khan in New York, and not in ones and twos, but in hundreds they came out and exposed. And that's not just protests on the streets. They are reaching out to lawmakers. They are reaching out to senators. Shiv, what Imran Khan does not realize is that Pakistan continues to live in the 19th century and thinks that that kind of diplomacy where you indulge in fear-mongering, nuclear saber-rattling and invoking the Muslim Ummah will work. But not even the Muslim Ummah stands with Pakistan. And it's not just Saudi Arabia and UAE. Except Turkey, there's nobody who's standing with Pakistan, and Imran Khan sadly now realizes that when he goes home to Pakistan, will he still remain Prime Minister, and how long will he remain Prime Minister, with Shah Mahmood Qureshi already sniping at his heels, remains the big question.
Leela Ponappa, you wanted to add to that, you wanted to respond to Qamar Chima. Go ahead.
Yes, I did. And not just in terms of who's demonstrating against whom and so on. As a democracy, I think there is always room for dissent. So if there are minorities in Pakistan who wish to demonstrate against Imran Khan, that's their right, and that's not the issue. But he talked about unilateralism on Kashmir. And I think it is worth remembering that the Jammu and Kashmir of 1947 included Gilgit-Baltistan, it included Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and there is a judgment of the POK High Court, or what Pakistan chooses to call the Azad Kashmir High Court, the so-called Azad Kashmir High Court, which states that all of Jammu and Kashmir necessarily includes what Pakistan at one point called the northern areas and so on. So Pakistan has done what Mr. Chima would call unilateral internal carpentry, if you will, in terms of managing the territory. And this is what has happened in India. I think Pakistan's outrage is because it did not expect it. Even though if they had read the BJP's election manifesto, it would have been very clear that the BJP had certain things in mind, including Article 370. Which, as has repeatedly been said, is an internal matter. It's part of the Indian Constitution.
Right.
Also, bilateralism was enshrined in the Simla Agreement. And this is something that we believe Pakistan is committed to.
Right.
If it is not, it should say so, because then it opens up an entire can of worms in terms of the intentions and the commitments and obligations of either side.
Yeah.
So I think, quite apart from the emotive aspects of today's speech by Mr. Imran Khan, I think it requires a very cool assessment of precisely what has happened. And while you have the internal dimension of Jammu and Kashmir, which is totally an Indian matter, with regard to Pakistan, I think has been very clearly stated by the Indian External Affairs Minister that there is no change with regard to the line of control.
Right.
So Pakistan needs to reflect on precisely how it handles this. And, trying to project itself as the savior of Islam or of minorities is frankly a bit ridiculous.
So Sadanand, zooming out
at the same time, I think we should take on board Sadanand's comment that they will try to use the Islamophobia aspect.
Absolutely.
And there is no room for complacency in India. I mean, just because Imran has spoken the way he did at the UN does not mean that story.
Which brings me to my next question to Sadanand. Zooming out from New York City, because it's been tempting for the media to project this as a kind of small little battleground, Modi versus Imran on the United Nations stage. It's been oversimplified in that manner in the media, but sort of pulling back to both these leaders back in their countries who will have to deal with each other. How do you see India-Pak relations? It's been a fraught year. It's been an especially bad year between both the countries. But on the back of this 1 week in the United States, what next in your view, Sadanand?
That's a very good question, Shiv. And I would say that I find it very, very hard to imagine, especially after watching Imran Khan's speech right now. I don't see any road back to a normal relationship between India and Pakistan. As long as Imran Khan is Prime Minister of Pakistan and Narendra Modi is Prime Minister of India. And the reason I say that is that it has become extremely personalized. If you watched Imran's speech, the things he was talking about are stuff that's actually, one may or may not agree with him, but it's sort of deeply about, deeply domestic issues, right? The nature of the RSS, the idea of Hindu nationalism, and so on. And I know we have all of these debates in India, but it's very unusual for a leader of another country, least of all Pakistan, to bring this up, and that to the United Nations.
Right.
So I think the amount of bad blood that has been generated in the last week or in the last couple of months between these two leaders means that it's going to be extremely difficult. And I think that finding a way back to talk about the kinds of things that, say trade or more normal things like people-to-people ties or those sorts of things, I just don't see that happening. at least in the foreseeable future.
Okay, so there has been a lot of bad blood. Patikrit, you wanted to say something to Kamar?
Yeah. First thing is that, see, many of
also on what happens next. Let's look forward to what happens as far as relations are concerned.
Many of the Arab states have faced Arab Spring, so they had to put reasonable restriction in place to quell that. So they look at what India has done from the perspective of maintaining the territorial integrity and sovereignty. That's why most of them have not reacted to it. Secondly, when it comes to what next, see, India has fortified its counter-infiltration grid so far as J&K is concerned. But in the realm of hybrid warfare, there is nothing that you can say that I have done enough. We have talked about drone, that's what. Unless we fortify our Indo-Nepal border, unless we fortify our Indo-Bangladesh border, because it's not necessary, the next terror attack emanating from Pakistan has to geographically come from Pakistan. That is very important. We have to look at most of the states still don't have a counter-terror response mechanism at place. Most of the time they depend on the central government.
You're saying things are precarious right now.
When it
Anything
comes
can
to
happen
the
if
states,
there's another Pulwama-like attack.
See, it's a foregone conclusion. It's not a question of if, but when. And the question is, we have the counter-terror response mechanism in place, but importance has to be given when it comes to thwarting it before it happens. And that's where the center has been doing a lot. Many of the states have not been a little as proactive as it should have been. That's where I think I have a little question mark.
Okay, Leela Punapak, yes, go ahead. You had a quick comment, then I'll bring Kamar back in, to respond.
Yes, no. The answer to your question about what next. Now, there have been in the past also huge highs and lows with regard to Pakistan.
Yes.
We are currently at a low point. I think at some stage, diplomacy, backroom or upfront might bring people to the table, but I think it's very important that India not send mixed signals. And to that extent, I think the message is very clear. You keep doing terrorism, there's no room for talks. And I think this again is an opportunity that Imran Khan missed at the United Nations of abjuring terrorism. Given his multifarious confessions about how many terrorists there were in Pakistan waiting to cross over, the kind of training that has taken place, and regardless of what he himself said, Pakistan's own track record on the whole thing, going back to General Musharraf and so on and so forth, General Zia and so on. So India has to be clear, it has to maintain its responses, not let down its guard. We have to expect the unexpected and develop our capabilities. Too often there is this notion that, national security is an afterthought. It's a policing action and so on. As a country, we are unfair to ourselves both in terms of defense and in terms of policing. And there's a lot more gearing up to be done.
So the onus still remains very much on Pakistan. Sadanand, I'll come to you in just a moment. I want to just get one word in from Kamar. Kamar, the onus is still very much on Pakistan. The External Affairs Minister has mentioned it, called you terroristan. The Prime Minister hasn't mentioned Pakistan even once in the last 1 week. The belligerence has all come from Pakistan's side. The message is very clear. The ball is in Pakistan's court.
Well, Shiv, let me tell you, I think the diplomatic offensive that has been launched by Prime Minister Imran Khan at UNJ is not going to, be ending very soon. I think what Prime Minister Imran Khan is saying that this is not an Islamophobia that is a problem.
It's an opportunity missed. Like Leela Ponappa said, it's an opportunity missed for Imran Khan to make Pakistan sound like it can take that first step. It can do something meaningful towards convincing India to come back to the dialogue table. That's missed.
I will not like my Prime Minister to come on table with India. I will not recommend.
Why was he practically begging the US President to convince India to come back to talks then?
I think he may be having his position.
India has spoken in one voice. Pakistan hasn't, Kamar. That's the point.
The temperature in Pakistan is not about to talk with India. I think we are not in a mood to talk with India. And I think this is what Pakistani government is. The onus lies on Prime Minister to shift the responsibility on India. This is Hindu religious extremism, which is responsible for this extremism. And it has a transnational currents and it has a transnational influence. And this is where Prime Minister Imran Khan is saying that Hindu religious extremism is the next threat that is a danger to the South Asian peace.
It's farcical. It's actually farcical that Imran Khan had to invoke the RSS and Indian Muslims. He actually talked about Indian Muslims and how they could be radicalized, which is something that's going to backfire in a very, very big way. But Sadanand, you wanted to come in.
No, I just want to make the point that, there's something that I think the Indian establishment should be a little bit more aware of, which is that this terrorism card in diplomacy, it's of course been extremely effective, particularly post-Mumbai in 2008 and the discovery of Osama bin Laden in 2011 in Pakistan, right? And those have sort of been the two markers that have really kind of played to India and played against Pakistan. But at the same time, if you sort of, dispassionately observe what Imran is trying to do, he's trying to do two things. He's trying to distance himself, right? So what he does is he says that, well, Pulwama was a local Kashmiri guy. And then he's trying to say that, well, look, now because the status quo has been changed so dramatically, and what is going on in Kashmir with the, mobile internet, mobile phones being shut down and so on, is draconian, and in honesty, it is viewed as draconian in much of the world. He's trying to sort of lay the ground for how the world views things coming up ahead. And I don't think it's enough, and I don't think it's adequate for Indian diplomacy to hinge too much on stuff that has happened in the past.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, for the way sort of decision making and the way policy making works, at least in places like Washington, is that it doesn't take this sort of super long view. This happened in 1974. This happened in 1965. This is sort of that's not how people think. That's not how decision making works over here. And I think that means that the diplomacy needs to take into account that people are going to respond overwhelmingly to the most recent information first.
Okay.
And the most recent information, because of what's happening in Kashmir, actually does create more complications for India than we had, say, 6 months ago or a year ago.
Okay, so we'll have to see. There are many questions. It's definitely not black and white. There are complexities that India will have to navigate as well. It's not just a simple comparison of two speeches delivered by two leaders at the United Nations General Assembly, even though credibility is something that I will put on the table. There is a huge credibility difference between what India says and what Pakistan says, but the points are all very well taken. There are complexities that will need to be navigated going forward. After all, India and Pakistan do have to exist together. They are nuclear neighbors. We'll have to see what comes next. Thank you very much to all of you for joining me here on Newstrack. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you would love to.